Jack Fletcher never planned to be famous or infamous, or whatever the hell you call someone who assaults the most powerful being in the known universe while representing your entire species. But then again, Jack never planned for any of this. First contact happened on a Tuesday. Not with majestic ships descending from the heavens or mysterious signals decoded by brilliant scientists. No, it happened when Jack was grabbing coffee at the corner shop near the UN building where he worked as a mid-level translator. The alien who later introduced himself as Ambassador Glix materialized right next to the creamer station, causing Jack to spill his freshly poured dark roast all over his only decent work shirt. Greetings, primitive carbon-based dominant species representative. The purple, tentacled creature warbled through what appeared to be a small metal box attached to what Jack assumed was its face. I come seeking your planet's designated negotiator for admission proceedings to the Galactic Confederacy of Sentient Species. Jack, using his extensive diplomatic training, eloquently responded, "What the actual fuck?" 12 hours later, Jack found himself in a hastily assembled meeting room at the UN, surrounded by panicked world leaders who couldn't agree on anything except that someone needed to go with the aliens immediately. The Galactic Confederacy had apparently been observing Earth for centuries and decided we had finally reached the minimum threshold for civilized intelligence, a backhanded compliment if Jack had ever heard one. "We require one representative," Ambassador Glix had explained. "Our scans indicated this human, a tentacle pointed at Jack, possesses adequate linguistic capabilities and relatively minimal aggressive tendencies compared to your species' baseline." And just like that, Jack became Earth's first ambassador to the stars, armed with nothing but his UN credentials, 3 hastily packed suitcases, and a crash course on interstellar diplomacy delivered by people who had never met an alien before today. The first problem arose when Jack met Emperor Vrex'ticon, supreme ruler of the Galactic Confederacy. The gangly, silver-skinned being with 8 glowing eyes looked down at Jack, literally and figuratively, and spoke through his translator. "Fascinating. It's smaller than I expected, and it wears fabric coverings even though it has no scales or sensory ridges to protect." The Emperor circled Jack like he was examining a particularly interesting insect. "Tell me, little Earth thing, do you understand the concept of superior life forms? Or shall I use smaller words?" Jack smiled tightly. "I understand perfectly, Your Magnificence. On Earth, we also have a tradition of condescending to species we've just met." The Emperor laughed, a sound like breaking glass mixed with dial-up internet. It attempts humor. Charming, in a primitive way. "Your world will make an excellent protectorate once we've established proper oversight." And that was when Jack realized that admission to the Galactic Confederacy might actually mean fancy colonization with extra steps. 3 months later, Jack received the official summons to appear before the Galactic Senate. Earth had been granted provisional observer status, which basically meant they could have one representative sit quietly in the back while the grown-ups talked. "You can't send me back there," Jack pleaded to the Emergency UN Committee. "The Emperor hates me." "Which is precisely why you must go," said the Secretary General. "You've established a rapport. And frankly, no one else wants the job." That's how Jack found himself boarding the diplomatic vessel Magnificent Pomposity, a name that seemed to sum up galactic civilization perfectly. His only companion was Pixel, an AI assistant loaded onto a small hovering sphere, designed by Earth's best engineers to help translate alien concepts and record everything for posterity. "Looking forward to our journey, Ambassador Fletcher," chirped Pixel in its deliberately friendly voice. "I've downloaded 17 intergalactic etiquette guides and can advise you on proper behavior toward 219 distinct species." "Great. Any advice on how not to punch an 8-eyed emperor in his smug face?" "I believe that falls under universal diplomatic no, sir." The ship's captain, a reptilian being named Krell, made it clear from the moment Jack boarded that humans weren't welcome. "Your quarters are in the maintenance section," he hissed. "Try not to touch anything important. Your primitive oils might corrode sensitive equipment." "Captain, I'm curious," Jack said pleasantly. "Is being an asshole a prerequisite for your position, or just a hobby you've cultivated?" Krell's forked tongue flicked out. Humans, always resorting to crude language when their limited brains can't process superiority. During the 3-week journey, Jack learned more about the Confederacy through Pixel's data and eavesdropping on the crew. The Galactic Senate comprised representatives from over 300 spacefaring civilizations, but real power rested with the Emperor and the 12 advanced species, who had mastered faster than light travel over 10,000 years ago. Everyone else, including humans, were essentially considered galactic children, tolerated but not respected. It's basically space colonialism with better PR, Jack muttered to Pixel as they watched stars streak by. And we're about to walk right into their headquarters. Actually, Pixel corrected, the magnificent pomposity is traveling at 17 times the speed of light, so technically we're not walking. Not the time, Pixel. The Senate station orbited a neutron star at the galaxy's center, a statement of both technological prowess and extreme impracticality that seemed to define galactic politics. The massive structure resembled a giant metal squid, with curved arms extending from a bulbous center where the Senate chamber itself was located. As Jack disembarked, he was immediately overwhelmed by the diversity of life forms hustling through the arrival terminal. Beings with multiple limbs, no limbs, exoskeletons, crystalline structures, gaseous compositions, the variety was staggering. "Remember, sir," Pixel whispered, hovering near Jack's shoulder, "don't make direct eye contact with these Xanthians. They consider it a mating proposal." "Which ones are these Xanthians again?" "The orange floating pyramids." "Of course they are." A gelatinous purple mass oozed toward them, resolving into a vaguely humanoid shape with multiple eye stalks protruding from what might be considered its head. "Ah," the human representative. It gurgled cheerfully. "I am Zorba, junior assistant to the Undersecretary of the Welcoming Committee for Emerging Species. I've been assigned as your liaison." Jack extended his hand before remembering this might be culturally inappropriate for a being with no solid form. He awkwardly converted the gesture into a wave. "Jack Fletcher, Earth." "Oh, I know who you are," Zorba bubbled, eye stalks quivering with what Jack hoped was excitement. "The one who spoke back to Emperor Vrex'ticon, and most emerging species representatives just drool in terror their first meeting." "Well, humans have a special talent for annoying authority figures." As Zorba guided Jack through endless corridors, he explained the Senate protocols in a rapid, enthusiastic stream. "You'll be seated in the observation ring, Section 47Q, behind the methane breathers, but in front of the radiation feeders. They insisted to know something about your species being too fragile for their normal emissions." They passed through security checkpoints where Jack's biology was scanned, catalogued, and labeled mostly harmless but unpredictable, a designation that would soon prove prophetic. "One important thing," Zorba said, lowering his voice to a wet whisper. "The Emperor has taken a special interest in your planet's case." "That's unusual." "Special interest? That sounds ominous." "Perhaps. Or perhaps an opportunity." Zorba's eye stalks darted around suspiciously. "Not all of us are satisfied with the current administration. You understand. The Ancient 12 have ruled for too long. Some believe it's time for fresh perspectives." Jack narrowed his eyes. "Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting?" "I'm suggesting nothing," Zorba said innocently, his gelatinous body rippling. "You're merely providing cultural context. By the way, did you know that in ancient galactic tradition, physical challenges were once considered a legitimate form of political discourse?" Before Jack could pursue this bizarre tangent, they arrived at the Senate chamber, a vast amphitheater with thousands of seats arranged in concentric rings around a central speaking platform. The chamber hummed with the cacophony of hundreds of translation devices working simultaneously. "Your seat, Representative Fletcher." Zorba indicated a small chair in the furthest ring from the center. "The session begins in 20 chrononits. I suggest you prepare yourself. Things might get interesting." The session began with a ceremony so tedious it made Earth bureaucracy seem exciting by comparison. 12 representatives of the ancient species entered first, each performing their species' traditional greeting, which for one crystalline entity meant vibrating at a frequency that made Jack's fillings hurt. Lesser dignitaries followed in strict hierarchical order, a procession that took nearly an hour. Jack watched, increasingly restless, as delegation after delegation took their places, each afforded more respect than the last that entered. Finally, trumpets blared, or something approximation of trumpets that sounded like whales having an argument, and Emperor Vrex'ticon glided into the chamber on a floating platform, his silver skin gleaming under the lights, his 8 eyes swiveling independently to survey his subjects. Esteemed delegates of the Galactic Confederacy, the Emperor began, his translator broadcasting in standard Galactic Common. We gather today to address several matters of importance, including the concerning situation developing in the spiral arm designated Backwater Quadrant 4. Jack straightened in his seat. That was Earth's region of space. As you know, we recently admitted a new primitive species. Emerging corrected an unseen aid. Yes, emerging species. The Emperor continued smoothly, from a small blue planet they call Earth. Their development has been quaint, if uneven. They've mastered basic atomic power but continue to use it primarily for weapons. They've reached their own satellite but rarely venture beyond. They communicate electronically but still primarily through crude auditory means. Nervous laughter rippled through the chamber. Jack gripped the armrests of his chair. After careful consideration and extensive scans of their world, I propose a Class 3 protection initiative for Earth. This would place a Confederacy Oversight Committee on their planet, provide them with controlled technological advancements on our timetable, and ensure they don't hurt themselves as they develop. Jack's blood ran cold. He'd read enough about Class 3 protections in the ship's database. It was colonization with a friendly face. Earth would effectively become a vassal state, its resources available for Confederacy use, its people restricted from independent space travel. The Emperor continued, our preliminary assessments suggest humans require special handling. They're unusually aggressive for their development stage, prone to irrational behavior, and exhibit dangerous levels of both individualism and tribalism simultaneously. Will the Earth representative be permitted to respond? Called a voice from the mid-level rings. Yeah. Jack couldn't see who had spoken, but he silently thanked them. The Emperor's eyes swiveled in Jack's direction. Of course. We value all perspectives, even underdeveloped ones. Human Fletcher, you may approach the speaking platform. Jack stood, straightened his jacket, the one formal outfit he'd packed, and made his way down the stairs toward the central platform. Pixel followed discreetly, recording everything. As he walked, Jack's mind raced. This was humanity's moment, their one chance to avoid becoming a footnote in someone else's empire. Everything depended on his next words. He reached the platform, adjusting the universal translator at his throat. Esteemed delegates, he began, trying to keep his voice steady. I stand before you as the representative of Earth, a planet that has only just learned we are not alone in the universe. He paused, looking around at the assembled aliens. Some appeared bored, others curious, a few openly dismissive. The Emperor has painted a picture of my species as dangerous children in need of supervision. And yes, humans can be aggressive, irrational, and contradictory. We've fought countless wars against ourselves. We've damaged our own planet through carelessness. We make the same mistakes repeatedly throughout our history. The Emperor's eyes gleamed with satisfaction at this apparent admission. But Jack continued, his voice strengthening, we also compose symphonies that can move beings to tears. We sacrifice ourselves to save strangers. We look at the stars not with fear but with wonder and determination. And most importantly, we learn from our mistakes. Jack took a step toward the Emperor. Your magnificence suggests we need protection. But let's be honest about what that really means. Earth has resources you want, positions you can control, a new market for whatever goods your advanced civilizations produce. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The Emperor claims humans are aggressive, Jack said, his voice growing sharper. But we're not the ones trying to subjugate another species under the guise of protection. We're not the ones who've built a galactic system where power rests with only 12 species out of hundreds. The Emperor rose from his seat, eyes narrowing. You misunderstand, human. Your species would benefit greatly from our guidance. We've heard that line before on Earth, Jack replied, It usually comes right before someone plants a flag in your land and tells you it's no longer yours. You dare suggest the Emperor began? I dare a lot of things, Jack interrupted, breaking protocol entirely. That's what humans do. We dare, we challenge, we push boundaries. And most of all, Jack stepped onto the Emperor's platform technically forbidden for lesser species representatives. We don't take kindly to being patronized. What happened next occurred so quickly that even the high-definition recordings later analyzed by 17 different species experts couldn't quite agree on the sequence of events. Jack, standing too close to the Emperor, gestured emphatically. The Emperor's guards moved forward. Jack stepped back, stumbled on the edge of the platform, and reached out instinctively to steady himself. His hand grabbed the Emperor's ceremonial collar. The Emperor, unused to physical contact, jerked backward. Jack, still off balance, pulled forward. They both tumbled from the platform. And somehow in a moment that would be replayed across thousands of worlds, Jack Fletcher of Earth ended up on top of Emperor Vrex'ticon, the most powerful being in the galaxy, right with the Emperor's head firmly pressed against the Senate chamber floor. Absolute silence fell over the chamber. Jack, horrified, immediately released the Emperor and scrambled back. "I'm so sorry, that was an accident, I didn't mean." But he stopped when he noticed something strange. No guards were rushing to arrest him. No weapons were being drawn. Instead, the entire Senate appeared frozen in shock, not at the action itself, but at something else entirely. Zorba oozed quickly to Jack's side, eye stalks rigid with excitement. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" "Committed galactic treason?" Jack suggested weakly. "You've invoked the right of contested leadership," Zorba bubbled. "An ancient tradition from before the Confederacy formalized its laws. A physical challenge to authority, it hasn't been used in 12,000 years, but it's still in the founding charter." The Emperor was now being helped to his feet by aides. His silver skin flushed a deep blue with what Jack assumed was either embarrassment or rage. "This is absurd," Vrex'ticon sputtered. "The human clearly doesn't understand." "Understanding is not required for the right to be valid," announced one of the ancient 12 representatives, a being composed entirely of swirling gas contained within an environmental suit. "Intent is irrelevant. The physical challenge has been made before witnesses." Another ancient representative, a crystalline entity, vibrated in apparent agreement. "The charter is clear. When one being places another's head upon the ground within the sacred circle, challenge is offered." "He's a primitive," the Emperor protested, "from an unaffiliated world. He can't possibly invoke ancient rights." Actually, Pixel chimed in, hovering forward. "According to Confederacy Charter, Section 912, subsection Theta, all sentient beings appearing before the Senate are granted equal standing under foundational law. There's no species restriction on the right of contested leadership." Jack stared at his AI assistant in amazement. "You couldn't have mentioned this earlier." "You didn't ask, sir." The Senate erupted into chaos. Representatives argued with each other across species lines. The ancient 12 conferred in a tight huddle, and through it all, Emperor Vrex'ticon glared at Jack with all 8 eyes. His translator apparently switched off as his mouth moved in what were undoubtedly not compliments about humanity. 3 days later, Jack sat in considerably improved quarters aboard a different ship heading back to Earth. Across from him sat Zorba, now officially the Confederacy's ambassador to Earth, his gelatinous form practically vibrating with excitement. "I still can't believe how perfectly it worked out," Zorba bubbled. "We've been trying to challenge the Emperor's authority for centuries, but none of us had the anatomical configuration or cultural predisposition to just grab someone and slam them down." Jack sighed. "I told you, it was an accident. A glorious accident. The history books will call it the Fletcher maneuver." After the initial chaos, the Senate had invoked emergency procedures to resolve the unprecedented situation. Since Jack had technically issued a challenge he couldn't possibly win, the Emperor's species was physically superior to humans in every measurable way. A compromise was reached. Earth would not become a protectorate. Instead, It would receive full membership status centuries ahead of the normal timeline with all the associated benefits and protections. In exchange, the Emperor would retain his position, and the unfortunate physical misunderstanding would be officially described as a cultural exchange demonstration. Unofficially, the Emperor's authority had been irreparably damaged. For the first time in millennia, the Ancient 12 were openly discussing reforms to the Confederacy's structure. "You've become something of a celebrity," Zorba informed Jack. "Several species have requested human diplomatic representatives specifically. They're calling it direct diplomacy. The Floraxians have even begun practicing physical contact in preparation for their next negotiation session." Jack groaned. "So I've turned humans into the galaxy's equivalent of political wrestlers." In a manner of speaking, Zorba's eye stalks wiggled with amusement. "But consider the alternative. Earth is now recognized as a full member world. You'll receive technological assistance, trade opportunities, and actual protection, not the exploitative kind. All because I accidentally body slammed an emperor." "The most dignified body slam in galactic history," Zorba corrected. "Yes, and perhaps exactly what the Confederacy needed. Sometimes progress requires unexpected methods." Pixel hovered nearby. "Sir, incoming transmission from Earth. The Secretary-General wishes to inform you that you've been officially appointed as Earth's permanent representative to the Galactic Senate. They're calling your position High Ambassador for direct diplomatic engagement." Jack laughed despite himself. "So I'm basically Earth's official galactic troublemaker." "I believe disruptive diplomatic innovator is the preferred term," Pixel replied. "Oh, and the UN has approved funding for 20 more human representatives to be trained in your methods." As the ship accelerated toward Earth, Jack gazed out at the stars, wondering what the future held for humanity among the countless civilizations of the galaxy. One thing was certain: they wouldn't be underestimated again. Somewhere, in a private chamber on the Senate station, Emperor Vrex'ticon was undoubtedly nursing both a bruised head and a bruised ego, learning the lesson countless others throughout human history had learned the hard way. Underestimate humans at your own risk.